Well, here we are then. The time has come for me to reveal my team going into game week 1. Now, for this feature, I'm going to do an individual feature on some of the players I think are the more important picks in this team. First up, we've got our goalkeeper. Now, I'm going for Onana. I think 5 million, probably too cheap for him. And Man United, they kept the most clean sheets in the league last season, right? And based on how he's been playing, I reckon he could get 1 or 2 assists this season. Not that you'd be picking a goalkeeper for assists, but I really do think that's a reality. I also don't think that the Man United defenders are amazing for attacking returns. I know Luke Shaw is quite attacking, but he didn't light the world up in terms of actual attacking returns last season. And I think you can save yourself 0.5 million, triple up on United by going for Onana rather than Luke Shaw. And I think the saves bonus that he can get, and just generally the bonus points potential, you know, the BPS system in FPL, I think he could probably do better than Shaw in terms of total points. And as well, if he doesn't get off to a good start, being 5 million, you just drop him down to a 4.5 million keeper and just stick and hold from that point. In terms of stats, it's obviously difficult to compare him to De Gea because they play for different teams. But if you look at his stats, and what I thought I'd do is just look at De Gea's stats in comparison, purely because I think Onana is a very similar level player to De Gea. Although he's a bit better with his distribution, he makes sort of a similar, number of occasional mistakes. Obviously, every keeper makes mistakes and a similar number of saves per 90. Inter Milan were quite a defensive team last year, so they had a higher clean sheet percentage than Man United did. In terms of saves per 90, they were pretty close to one another. In terms of save percentage, Onana was actually slightly better than David De Gea was, so he could actually improve the Man United defence. And I think just in general, the fact that he's a ball-playing goalkeeper, it will mean that Man United will become a more possession-based team. That in turn, I think, will lead to more clean sheets. So Onana is going to be my keeper. So starting off with the defence then, I've gone for Chilwell, Gabriel and Estupiñán. I think as a 3, this is probably, in my opinion at least, the best 3 that you can pick. You could have John Stones there in place of Chilwell, but I just think with the opening fixtures that Chelsea have and the attacking upside that Chilwell has, I think he's probably a better pick. Obviously, they play Liverpool first up, so they might not get a clean sheet in that game. But having watched Liverpool in pre-season with Trent drifted into midfield, they leave so much space down their right-hand side of their defence, which Chilwell I expect to exploit in that game, especially considering when you look at the heat map of how Chelsea have been playing in pre-season. Now, I don't hang my hat on pre-season, but it is useful to see how teams set up. Particularly Chelsea, Chilwell has been by far and away the most advanced of the 2 fullbacks, being obviously Chilwell and James. Chilwell's been bombing forward in pre-season and looking really attacking. I think he could well get some attacking returns against Liverpool. And even, to be honest, Stamford Bridge is usually a tough place to go, right? I do expect Chelsea to be, revived under Pochettino, and they could well keep a clean sheet in that fixture too. So Chilwell, I really like him. Gabriel, I really like the Arsenal defence for the opening fixtures. Of all the Arsenal defenders, I think he's pretty nailed in the team, and he has the most goal threat. Another thing with Gabriel, most of his goal threat obviously comes from set pieces, and I'm pretty sure 6 of the first 7 fixtures that Arsenal have are against the 6 worst teams for defending set pieces. So that means surely he's going to get some attacking returns there. Estupiñán is my 3rd defender. I think he's still the most popular defender in the game. Opening fixtures for Brighton are fantastic. I expect them to get a good load of clean sheets, and with Estupiñán being really attacking, I also expect him to get some attacking returns as well. So my first midfielder in this team, and I'm doing a little feature on him here, is Gabriel Martinelli. Now, after that Jesus injury, which is obviously unfortunate for Jesus, I do think it means Martinelli's minutes are going to be really good for the start of the season. Obviously, there's a bit of debate as to whether Trossard comes in, plays the number 9, and Nketiah comes in, plays in the number 9. Havertz can play there too, though he didn't look very good in the Community Shield. I think regardless of who plays at the number 9, right, of course, Martinelli could play there too. I think Martinelli is going to start every game. He's been so good last season, and Arteta clearly really likes him. Even when Trossard was, playing at the level he was coming off the bench, Martinelli was still starting most games. So I really do feel like Martinelli is going to be a sure starter for the first few fixtures. And to be honest, even when he was benched towards the end of last season, he came on and scored. I think he was benched in 3 games and scored 3 or 4 goals off the bench. So yeah, he can play at that level. And of course, Havertz, Trossard, they can play at 9. So can Martinelli. So he could well play up there too. Obviously, you'd look at Odegaard as an alternative. He's 0.5 million more than Martinelli, and he really overperformed his stats last year. If you look at Martinelli's stats, whilst he might have overperformed his expected goals, he really underperformed his expected assists. So I really do expect his returns this season to be very similar to what they were last year. He didn't really show too much discrepancy in terms of total goal involvement across the season. And just in general, I mean, those Arsenal fixtures to open things up are absolutely fantastic. And I feel like not owning Martinelli, to start off with at least, is going to be a mistake. All right, so next up in the midfield, a little short feature on Bruno Fernandes. I just think he's literally one of the most nailed players in the Premier League. You can hook him in your team to start with and just forget about him, really. You know he's going to play every game and return at a steady level across the season with the penalties and the free kicks and just how creative he can be. He had 16 expected assists in the Premier League last season and only managed 9, and that was because basically Man United had Wout Weghorst playing up front for most of the season. I really do expect him to find the numbers that he had in the seasons of past. I remember, wasn't he like 12 million a couple of seasons ago, and now he's dropped all the way to 8.5. I just think that's ridiculous value for a man that literally plays every game and has so much creativity about him. And he can always score a goal from open play, as well as penalties and free kicks as well. So I just think he's an excellent option. Saka up next. Again, I don't really think I need to say too much about Saka. He's pretty much as safe to start as Bruno Fernandes. Whilst Arsenal have signed some good players going forward, they haven't really signed someone that can play on the right-hand side, which you've got to think Saka's going to be nailed in that position. Even when they've got Europe and the Cups to contend with, I expect him to start pretty much every game. And even when he doesn't start, he'll probably get decent minutes off the bench. Hopefully still remains the Arsenal penalty taker. Jorginho, I think, will take the penalties when he's on the pitch, but I don't expect him to be starting for Arsenal most Premier League games, so Saka still retains that responsibility. I genuinely think he's Arsenal's best player, and if you look at the expected data last season, he was by far and away the best Arsenal player, and I just think for the guarantee of minutes that he's going to get, 8.5 is far too cheap for him really, so he has to go in my team. Now, I've gone for a 6.5 million mid. There are obviously lots of options. You can have the likes of Eze, Diaby from Aston Villa and Mitoma look to be popular picks, but I really like Mbeumo from Brentford. I've said this since basically the game came out. I think 6.5 million is fantastic value for him because I really do think he's going to fill the talisman role for Brentford that Tony previously had. Looks like he's been playing on the wing rather than up front, with Visser playing at the number 9, but regardless of where Mbeumo plays, he always looks dangerous pretty much every time I watch him, and he's going to be taking the penalties off of Tony, and we know how many penalty goals Tony scores, so I think he's always got that in his locker, and he takes the free kicks for Brentford as well. And looking at last season, he featured in all 38 games, so he's absolutely nailed in the team. Scored 9 goals, 8 assists. What's that, 17 attacking returns? I mean, that's fantastic. You got to think, if he's that talisman role for Brentford, those attacking returns are going to only improve. You know, you're picking a player for 6.5 million and they do better than 9 goals and 8 assists. You're going to be flying. I think he's going to be a really good pick. The one thing to monitor about him is that he did come off early in a pre-season game, or the last pre-season game before the season actually starts. Thomas Frank said he had a dead leg and he took him off as a precaution and expects him to be fine for the opening weekend. For me, if there's any doubt about him starting, I think in the other alternative 6.5 million mids are good enough that I'd pick them so I don't have to worry about his injury. So I'm waiting basically for Thomas Frank's press conference in the week. I think Eze is the second choice 6.5 million mid for me. It's got similar benefits to Mbeumo, just slightly tougher fixtures and maybe a less attacking team. But yeah, for me, Mbeumo is in my team. And my final midfielder is Marcus Rashford. I don't really need to think I need to talk too much about Marcus Rashford. He's one of the most popular midfielders in the game. That's obvious for a reason. I think he's going to have another fantastic year for Man United. And with the signing of Højlund, he might have to start the season playing number 9 because it looks like Højlund's injured. But eventually he will move out onto the left wing. I think both in number 9 and in the left wing he's dangerous. But I actually think he's more dangerous on the left wing. That seems to be his more natural position. I just think with the signing of a new goalkeeper as well, who can ping the balls long to him and to run in behind defences, he's going to be even more dangerous. And those opening fixtures for Man United, Wolves, Tottenham and Forest. Wolves, I think, are all over the place at the moment. They seem to have had their squad completely taken away from them. All their best players have basically been sold. Tottenham, I think they're going to be a really attacking team this season and leave a lot to be desired defensively. And Forest were literally one of the worst defences in the league last season. So I think he can really exploit those defences. There's obviously other mids at 9 million and below that you could go for, potentially Heung-min Son. I think Son becomes a real factor if Harry Kane leaves, and potentially later on in the season when his fixtures get better, you could swap Rashford for Son in that instance. I don't think I'm going to be, obviously, not starting with Son. Could be a transfer in later though, but Rashford is the final midfielder in my team. First of my strikers then is Ollie Watkins. Now, I've had Nkunku, I've had Jesus in my team. Both of them are doubts now, and it just means I've got to go for Ollie Watkins, in my opinion. I think, to be honest, he's very competitive with the two of them in terms of a pick anyway, regardless of them being injured. He plays 90 minutes consistently for Aston Villa, and he takes their penalties as well. He had an excellent pre-season, and I know Emery really likes him. I've heard from Aston Villa fans, Emery really likes Watkins, considers him his main striker. He's the obvious replacement for Nkunku or Jesus. You know, he can sideways move between the two players, or three players even, if you fancy Nkunku as well. He had a fantastic campaign last season. 37 games, 15 goals and 6 assists. I mean, that's fantastic. Well worth 8 million. You know, if he returns that kind of level of returns this season for 8 million, I think he's a great price. And he slightly underperformed those expected goals as well. So, given that Villa, I think, are going to improve even more than they did when Emery took over, the signing of Diaby and Pau Torres, I think it's going to really improve them alongside Tielemans as well. I just think they're going to get better and better. Hopefully, he can hit the 20-goal mark and get off to a good start in my team. I don't really need to talk about the fact I've gone for Erling Haaland, do I? He's got the top expected points, Burnley away, opening things up. The promoted team, they were a good defence in the Championship, and it is away, but when you've got a fancy Man City to have a good one there, he's my captain, as he is pretty much everyone else's, so I don't think he needs any explanation. And as for my bench, at the moment it's got Areola on it. It could be Turner, who looks to be making a move from Arsenal to Nottingham Forest and could potentially be starting for Forest. One thing to know about that, he might not actually complete the move by the time the season starts, and they're looking at Dean Henderson as well, so he might not even be first choice. So Turner is one to monitor. I've gone for Areola because at the moment I think he's probably the best 4 million keeper. I mean, if Turner looks to be starting for Forest, then he's the best, but we watch and monitor that over the week. Henry, he's actually orange flagged in the game at the moment, but I think is the best 4.5 million defender. That might change if he's proven to be an injury doubt in Thomas Frank's press conference. Just one thing to watch. Bulldog, I think, is probably the best 4 million defender. We all know who the best 4 million defenders are now, right? You can have Bayer, Bulldog, and a couple of guys from Luton as well. Pick any of them, really. I think they'll all do quite similar. Semenyo, I mean, he's probably the 4.5 million striker with the most chance of starting across the season. There's one for West Ham as well, which I think is pretty good. I mean, take your pick, really, of the 4.5s. This team in game week 1 is predicted to get 61.2 points, and I've spent all the money. I've got nothing in the bank, but I think the team is well structured, that each of these players have very good alternatives at either a very similar or cheaper price. So I think this is a really good structure and a team to get yourself off on. Some people might call it boring, say it's a bit template. That's fair enough. The template is the template, in my opinion, for a reason, though, because they're tried and trusted players who you got to bank on they're going to do quite well. And thing is with me with FPL, right, you take your risk later on in the game when you know you've got a shot at winning it. For me, at the start, I think you just stick with the pack, because it's a bit like a peloton in a cycling race, right? You stick with the pack in the peloton, and then towards the end, you shoot on, sprint on, and overtake and potentially go for it and win. But to start off with, you can get completely left behind at the start and never be able to catch it up, and that's what I want to try to avoid. Alright, and that's the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a like rating and subscribe to the Golden Goal channel just there to see more content coming my way. I'll be deadline streaming before the deadline itself. We're going live, I think, at 4 PM UK time, British summer time for that. So maybe I'll make some changes to this team by then. You can check the deadline stream out to see that. Otherwise, I'll catch you in the next video.